Welcome back to Vine World Media. Today we're breaking down the entire Monsterverse, looking at budgets, worldwide gross, and which movies were actually the biggest financial successes. Stay tuned and enjoy. This is Movie Money. What happens when two of the most famous monsters in movie history share the same cinematic universe? Massive destruction, huge global audiences, and hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. With the upcoming season 2 of the Monarch series, I think it's a good time to discuss the Monsterverse. We are just going over the Monsterverse films, which means films like Godzilla Minus One and the Peter Jackson Kong films won't be included in this list. The start of the Monsterverse. The Monsterverse officially began with Godzilla, released in 2014. This film reintroduced Godzilla to Hollywood audiences with a more serious tone and large-scale destruction. The movie had an estimated production budget of about $160 million. Marketing costs likely pushed the total spending much higher, but we'll focus mainly on the production budgets here. So here's the quick breakdown. Domestic, which is the United States and Canada, brought in about $200 million. The international markets brought in another $329 million. The film earned approximately $529 million. This was a strong start for the franchise. It proved there was still a huge global audience for giant monster movies, and it gave Legendary Pictures confidence to expand the universe. Although it wasn't greatly received by a lot of critics, myself included, it was enough to keep the Monsterverse going. Enter Kong. 3 years later, the franchise expanded with Kong: Skull Island in 2017. This movie took a completely different approach compared to the first film. Instead of a darker tone, it leaned more into adventure, colorful visuals, and large-scale monster battles. It also introduced the concept that Godzilla and Kong existed in the same universe, planting the seeds for a future crossover. Production budget? About $185 million. At the box office, the movie performed very well globally. Domestic was approximately $168 million, with the international being $401 million. Worldwide gross about $569 million. International markets once again played a huge role, especially China, which significantly boosted the movie's global numbers. At this point, the Monsterverse had momentum. 2 movies, both profitable, and audience was starting to get excited about where the story might go. And then the franchise attempted its most ambitious film yet, the most ambitious entry. In 2019, the series returned with Godzilla, King of the Monsters. For fans of classic kaiju films, this was a dream project. It introduced legendary monsters like King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan, bringing several iconic creatures into the Monsterverse. This was easily one of the most visually ambitious entries in the franchise. Estimated production budget was between $170 and $200 million. However, the box office results were surprising, and not in a good way. Domestic gross was about $110 million, international about $277 million. Worldwide gross was about $387 million. Compared to previous films, this was a noticeable drop. There were a few reasons that may be responsible for this drop. Heavy competition from other major movies that summer, mixed reviews from critics, audience fatigue from big CGI spectacles. Because of its large budget and marketing costs, many analysts considered the film a financial disappointment, and for a moment, people started wondering if the Monsterverse might end sooner than expected. But then came the movie everyone had been waiting for. The Ultimate Showdown. In 2021, the franchise released Godzilla vs. Kong. This was the crossover event the entire universe had been building towards. 2 legendary monsters, 1 massive fight. But there was only one huge problem. The film was released during the pandemic. Movie theaters around the world were still recovering, and in the United States, the film also launched on streaming the same day it hit theaters. Normally, that would significantly reduce box office numbers, yet the movie still performed surprisingly well. Estimated production budget was around $160 to $175 million. The domestic was around $100 million, while internationally $370 million. Worldwide box office about $470 million. It became one of the first major box office hits of the pandemic era. This film basically saved the Monsterverse from fading out. It proved that audiences still wanted to see these monsters clash on the big screen. Because of that success, the studio officially continued the franchise, and the next movie would change the strategy likely. A smarter, leaner blockbuster. In 2024, the newest film arrived, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. This movie leaned heavily into the action and spectacle that audience seemed to enjoy most in the previous crossover. But there was one key difference behind the scenes. The budget was lower. Estimated production budget for this film was about $135 million. That's significantly cheaper than the several earlier entries in the series, and yet the film performed extremely well at the box office, roughly $196 million domestically and $374 million international. Worldwide gross around $570 million. That makes it one of the highest grossing films in the entire Monsterverse. But more importantly, from a studio perspective, it may actually be the most profitable entry in the franchise. Lower budget, stronger box office, major win. This showed the Monsterverse had found its formula. Now, instead of ranking the movies just by box office, let's do something more interesting. We'll rank the films by their profitability. Now, keep in mind, this is a simplified estimate based on production budgets versus worldwide gross. Studios also spend huge amounts on marketing and theater splits, but this gives us a clear comparison of performance. Here's ranking the most profitable to the least profitable. Number 1, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, with a budget of about $135 million, worldwide gross of $570 million, the box office margin over budget, roughly $435 million. This is likely the most financially efficient movie in the entire Monsterverse. Lower budget, huge audience turnout, and strong international performance. Number 2, Kong Skull Island, with a budget of about $185 million, worldwide gross of $469 million. The margins are about $384 million. Number 3, Godzilla, the one that started it all. About $160 million budget with $529 million worldwide. This left it with $369 million sitting on the table for the pockets. Number 4, Godzilla vs. Kong. About $160 to $175 million budget with a gross of $470 million. It made roughly $495 to $310 million, but considering this was during the pandemic, I don't think it's an actually fair comparison, but it is what it is. Number 5, Godzilla King of the Monsters. The budget was $170 to $200 million. The worldwide gross was $387 million. This leaves it with roughly $187 to $217 million profit, which is not too shabby, but it also makes it the lowest in the franchise. The key takeaway here is the newest movie didn't just make a lot of money. It was actually the most profitable Monsterverse film and one of the lowest budgets they ever had. What's interesting is that the franchise has actually recovered strongly after its lowest performing entry. That doesn't always happen with cinematic universes. When we combine every movie in the Monsterverse so far, the franchise has earned over $2.5 billion worldwide. That's across 5 films, averaging per movie roughly $500 million. And again, international markets are a massive part of this success. Without global audiences, the Monsterverse likely wouldn't have continued this long. There are a few reasons this franchise continued to succeed. First, global appeal, giant monster battles translate across languages and cultures. Second, recognizable characters. Godzilla and Kong are 2 of the most famous monsters in history. Third, the evolving tone. The series gradually shifted from serious disaster movie to full monster action spectacle. And finally, smarter budgeting. The newest film proved the studio doesn't need an extremely high budget to get strong results. That balance is important for long-term franchise survival. So what's next? With over $2.5 billion earned and a growing fan base, it's very likely the Monsterverse will continue expanding, possibly with more monsters, new storylines, and even bigger battles. We know there's another Godzilla Kong crossover film coming soon. Rumors are that maybe Space Godzilla, but I'm hoping more Gigan will appear in the film. The biggest question now is, can the next film become the first Monsterverse movie to cross $700 million or even $1 billion worldwide? It hasn't happened yet, but the franchise is getting closer. And if the momentum continues, we might be heading toward the biggest monster movie ever made. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know which Monsterverse movie is your favorite and which Monsterverse movie you want to see appear in the next series. Thank you for watching, and we're out.